Greetings, fellow movie lovers and TV enthusiasts all over the world. It's your boy Mikey Savage 21, aka the Prince of All Sweaties, bringing you another episode of the weekly Sweaty Review, the podcast where we review, break down, and discuss movies, TV shows, and all the sweaty goodness we film fans enjoy. Today is episode number 3.5 of the weekly Sweaty Review. Last time we talked about the top 5 best MCU picks, and today we will be continuing that very same discussion from last time and finish up our top 3 movie picks. And speaking of I am once again joined by my co-host Neospace, the angriest sweaty on the interwebs. Neo, how you feeling, man?
I'm actually feeling pretty damn good. Not too ticked off. Something's wrong with me, I know.
Hey, man, I mean, you're supposed to be the angriest guy on the interwebs, but sometimes you got to have your little downtime. But you know what's funny? You know, I kind of feel like we blue-balled our audience for several weeks on what our last 3 movie choices could be. And, I mean, hey, I'm sorry that this, was somewhat on purpose, but that's neither here nor there. But, yeah, a lot of people are probably like, oh, man, how you going to take a 2-week, 3-week break and leave us hanging like now we don't know what the last 3 movies are? Believe me, it was all calculated. It was all planned out. So, but like always, Mr. Neospace, we are going to start immediately with you on your number 3 pick. So what do you have at your number 3?
So my number 3 is a little bit controversial. It's a little bit crazy, and you're probably going to look at me like I'm a psychopath for it. But it is Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, interesting.
Most definitely. And the main reason I chose Spider-Man Homecoming was just with the simple fact it's Spider-Man finally coming into the MCU. They played him in perfectly. And honestly, you just couldn't have done it better. The Vulture kind of sucked, but it's Marvel, but you kind of expect the villains to suck. Except for, well, Loki and Thanos.
I gotta say I disagree with you on that about the Vulture.
I mean, he had good motivation. I hated how they did MJ, but Zendaya's a good actress, so it made up for it. But it's just, to be the love interest dad was kind of bad. Because the love interest for Spider-Man has always been MJ. They threw that off. They introduced this whole new character. I don't even remember her name. That's how disposable she was.
Liz Taylor.
Okay, yeah, again, that's how disposable she was. But I mean, the Vulture in itself was just... It was a disappointment. I mean, he was menacing, yes. The motivations for how he got his technological wings, I mean, how everything played out, worked. But at the same time, you could have just ended the movie right then and there. Spidey has super strength. Who cares if he's holding a gun? Hold his arm down, you have super strength. He's not going anywhere. And then scream for help. You're a high schooler trapped in a car with a grown man. Seriously,
but you gotta remember this though. His spider sense hadn't kicked in at that point, so he probably would have gotten shot point blank. He wouldn't have been able to dodge it. He didn't get that spider sense until we saw the beginning of Infinity War, when his hair finally stood up, and we're like, oh, he finally developed his ability to spider sense.
But I mean, at the same time, it's like, come on, like, this guy does not have super strength. Kick the crap out of him while he doesn't have the super armor. Now, that's all my bitching. We're talking about my favorite ones. So let me tell you all the crap I loved. First off, the scene in... I can't even remember where they went. It was like a gigantic obelisk. Every single part of that scene was beautifully done. Him pulling the ship back together with his webs. And the beautiful
that's
part
when they were on the barge. I remember. That was when they were on the barge.
Yeah, but I mean... The major thing was they didn't overuse Iron Man in it. They used him just the right amount. The dynamic between Spidey and Iron Man was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose the only real gripe I have is they made Aunt May hot. Like, that's the real gripe at the bottom of it. Vulture, I can give him a pass, but I mean, it's Aunt May. She's not supposed to be...
She can be as hot as she wants to be.
Okay, now, yes, but you know how the original Aunt May is supposed to look. Do not even lie to me.
Well, if you think about it, I do, but if you think about it, in all the Spider-Man films, Aunt May was getting younger and younger with each iteration that they cast. You started off with the very old one in the Tobey Maguire trilogy. Then you had the 2 Amazing Spider-Man films where she was younger. And then now you have Hot Aunt May, as she's been dubbed in the MCU. Plus, you know why they did that. This is so, this would give Happy Hogan something to do that gives him a possible love interest, because for the longest time everyone's like, oh wow, Tony Stark is gonna hook up with his Aunt May, and I'm like, no, I don't think they're gonna do that, because again at the time him and Pepper had broken up, so we thought, okay, she's not coming back. But then when they pulled that thing at the end where she's been there and they've been, back together, it's like, ooh, yeah, he ain't getting with Aunt May. But from what we've seen in the trailers for the new Spider-Man movie, it looks like Happy Hogan might be getting a little lucky and getting his happies on with hot Aunt May.
I mean, true, but that's my number 3 pick, man. And honestly, I don't have much more I can say about it. So tell me and the audience, what's yours?
All right, so mine is taking a complete different 180 from what you picked, with a somewhat basically a coming of age movie. My movie is actually going to be a film that it started the trend of transcending the genre that it was in. While it is a comic book movie, there are other several things you can throw into this movie in terms of genre. For this one, I would say that they went with the more so the spy route with it. They went more the espionage route with it.
Oh no.
And so by that alone, you probably can figure out what movie it is.
It's one of
my number 3 pick is Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Oh snap, I was not expecting that. I thought you were about to say Ant-Man, because they kind of made it like a Mission Impossible with ants.
I'll say this much. No, Ant-Man is not on my list. It would be in my top 10, but it is not in my top 5. I love Ant-Man to death, but at the same time, this was like a complete refresher for me, because up until this point, I wasn't the biggest fan of Captain America or Chris Evans as Captain America. Like, I loved the way they were using him, but I wasn't really on board with him until I saw him stretching his acting chops in this movie. And we got a different side to Cap, because we started to see the pieces of him transforming into ultimately what would lead to Captain America Civil War, where again you have these arcs between Tony Stark and Captain America, Steve Rogers, respectively, where one starts off this way and one starts off this way, and then they do a complete reverse. And this was Cap's breaking point. Not only did, his faith be shattered in what he believed in with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the government itself being infiltrated by Hydra, but then he also discovers that Hydra took his best friend from childhood, brought him back from death, and brainwashed him and made him this mind-washed creature that goes on a killing spree with just a mutterance of a few couple of words, which we later on saw in Captain America Civil War. So this really was all about Captain America, as most of the Captain America films are, but this was about his journey. This is about how he was getting to the Captain America we would later see in Civil War and Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. If you take this movie out, then you don't have the Captain America that we currently have. And again, I also like this movie because it organically introduced Falcon into the story. I didn't think we were going to get Falcon, but they found a way to organically introduce Sam Wilson into the story. They also gave Black Widow a more bigger starring role. Now, while she did have a definite standout role in Marvel's The Avengers, we really hadn't seen her up until that point. We saw her pop up in Iron Man 2, but she wasn't like one of the main characters, more so like a supporting actress. Same thing, you can say that thing with Marvel's The Avengers. While the focus was on that core group, at the same time, we were focused in on what was going on with Thor and with Iron Man and Bruce Banner / Hulk and Captain America. And then you have Hawkeye, who's been like brainwashed this whole entire time. And so Black Widow got relegated to the back. While as in this film, she had more of a screen presence because she was basically his co-star for this entire film. It's Captain America and Black Widow, and then you have Falcon get introduced. And then, like I said, then the revelation that Bucky this whole entire time has been alive. Like, I know Marvel loves to do their fake deaths, but that's a death that I didn't see coming, because I was like, oh yeah, what death is going to happen in this movie to kind of set him on that path that he's going to be on? And of course, it was the death of Bucky. And then now he's learning that Bucky has been alive this entire time and that Bucky doesn't remember him because of something that Hydra has done to him. Then you have the overall plot of Hydra just basically assimilating themselves into the government and amassing all this power. And then we get to see the downfall of S.H.I.E.L.D. The one thing that Captain America always leaned on and believed in, the same thing that Tony Stark didn't believe in and was starting to poke a little bit at Captain America in Marvel's The Avengers. He was poking at it a little bit, saying that, aren't you the least bit curious to know what they're doing here at S.H.I.E.L.D.? And ever since then, it's been like this little sense in the back of his head, like, can I
something's not right.
Can I completely trust these guys? And so, once again, he's proven, Tony Stark has proven right when this whole S.H.I.E.L.D. thing goes down. And so, overall, like I said, I could go on and on about this movie. I love Captain America, the Winter Soldier. It's definitely, to me, a standout film because, again, not only is it a comic book movie, but it transcends the genre that it's in. It is an espionage film, and it does espionage very well. And I'm not the biggest espionage person. I love little spy films and little things here and there. But what this movie it had all of that. It had the action. Now, it did have its share of, oh gosh, here we go with this again, like the whole fake Nick Fury death. I was like, yeah, Nick Fury's not dead. And I knew he wasn't going to be dead. Of course. And, this was
every
just
single YouTube outlet jokes about it. It's like, Fury could have died, yeah, but then he didn't.
And I mean, what purpose would it have served for him dying anyway? And then think about it. If he would have died, then we would have never gotten Captain Marvel, because how in the world could you organically introduce her into Infinity War towards the end? And how would you be able to introduce her in her own solo film? And how would you be able to introduce her into Endgame? So that's why I say that Nick Fury is a crucial part, which is why I understand why he had to live, but I don't think they had to do that fake death thing. And then also, I also want to see more of Maria Hill, because in a way, I feel like she is like B+ Black Widow. Like, we have the A+ Black Widow, the OG Black Widow, and I feel like she's B+ Black Widow, because she's got she's smart, she might not be as strong or as, hand-to-hand combat trained as Black Widow is, but she still can put up a decent fight. So it would have been nice to see more of her too. Again, I haven't really talked much about the villains because, once again, the villains are kind of just throwaway. Again, you have the whole organization of Hydra terraforming and taking over S.H.I.E.L.D. That's whatever. I mean,
Hydra's a crap basket villain group anyways. I mean, in the first Captain America, they were scary, but when you get down to Hydra by Winter Soldier, it's just like, wow, this is actually kind of pathetic.
And it kind of reminded me of G.I. Joe, especially when you have the good evil doctor. I'm drawing a blank on his name, where he shows up and he's still alive and he's put his subconscious into the screens, and I'm like, yep.
Oh, Zola.
Zola, yes. I was like, yep, we have definitely gone into a comic book movie, all right. Up until this point, everything seemed like it'd just be a regular old film, but then it's like, oh, gotta throw in a couple little things in here to make sure you realize this is a comic book movie. But I will say that Captain America, the Winter Soldier, did have one of the most satisfying endings ever, and it did set up Captain America Civil War very, very well, especially with that scene talking about, them finally, Bucky going to finally see, okay, who am I? Who is Bucky Barnes? Setting all of that up and what we would again get in Civil War and then later on down the road. So I love Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I think it's a genuinely great movie. If you have not seen it, believe me, I have not spoiled anything really. And from that movie, there are a couple of moments that I talked about, but there is still a lot going on. And we again have the introduction of a lot of characters that would be later on used. Some utilized well, some not so utilized, including Sharon Carter. But all right, man, what is your number 2 pick? Or first of all, did you have anything you wanted to add to Captain America Winter Soldier?
Only one thing. I'm going to quote CinemaSins on this. Bucky.
Yeah.
Alright, so for my number 2, so I have a tie, and you literally just said one of them.
Okay.
So my number 2 is a tie between Captain America the First Avenger and Captain America the Winter Soldier. For 2 reasons. I like Winter Soldier because, like you said, it's an espionage film. Admittedly, you get into comic book territory when you get into Zola and how they have to destroy the helicarriers. Like, come on, call the freaking Hulk. He destroyed one literally in under 5 minutes last time. I mean, it's just like they were trying not to use all the Avengers. I hated the Nick Fury fake out. What I did love about the movie, and probably one of my favorite parts, because you know me, I can put a movie on my favorites list just based off one scene. And it's the elevator scene that makes the Winter Soldier for me. When Cap literally gets in the elevator, he's sitting there for a minute, he's like, alright, do any of you want to get out before this gets started?
Oh, that is one of the best scenes. I love that scene from that movie.
Yeah, so they could have called the Hulk, but they were just trying everything they can to keep it a Captain America movie, which I respect. Of course, Bucky. I like Bucky's character, but damn it, they do not do him justice in the MCU. Now, the first Avenger, let's just talk about the first Avenger real quick. Winter Soldier I want to get off of, because we just spent a long time talking about that. No need to drag that out. But the first Avenger, my favorite scene of that whole movie has got to be that ending fight. You see the Red Skull, you see Captain America, you see what could have gone wrong with Captain America, you see them duking it out, and he touches the Tesseract. Like an idiot. We later find out he gets transported to Vormir, and he's the protector of the Soul Stone. But at the same time, like, dude, you know this thing is super powerful. Don't hold it with your hands. Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull, standout performance.
The trope of bad guys always trying to touch, the Infinity Stones with their bare hands instead of, having something to harness them with.
Exactly. I mean, but other than that, the ending where Captain America gets frozen in the ice, beautifully shot, beautifully directed. Hugo Weaving is a standout in the movie, of course. Red Skull, you can't beat Hugo Weaving as him. The whole idea of Captain America kicking out of Nazis is just the greatest thing ever. The Bucky death was very sad, but then we get to the Winter Soldier and you're like, oh, well, thanks for making me cry for nothing, assholes.
In a way, I saw it coming, but then I didn't see it coming when it came to Bucky and his death.
Yeah, like you knew he was going to come back, you just didn't know how. And I think that's what plays with you the most, because you don't know how Bucky's going to come back. But you know he's such an integral part to Captain America, he has to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bouncing back to Winter Soldier a little bit. I do still think the implanting the perfect little microchips was kind of impossible, considering Cap can barely use a freaking flip phone.
That's one of those things where you just kind of have to suspend disbelief a little bit.
Yeah. Still hate Zola. Will always hate Zola. He can go jump off a bridge. Oh wait, he's a computer, so no, he can't technically do that. But his character can go to hell for all I care.
Someone throw him in a swimming pool.
That'll work. That will work. We'll pull a Colossus and a Juggernaut on him. Just shove the lightning cable up his butt and shove him in the pool.
Oh, and one other thing that I didn't mention when I talked about Captain America Winter Soldier, we also got to see the seeds be planted for a possible romance between Captain America and Black Widow, because this is the movie where that shipping first started, because they were starting to get to know each other. Because when it's just you two and you have nothing else going on and you're in a car together driving somewhere, you're going to get to know the person that you're in the car with.
This is true. And I will say the one thing, I agree with you when it comes to First Avenger and Winter Soldier, Maria Hill. Discount Black Widow. From now on, I'm going to call her the Black Tarantula, because now it's just stuck in my head that she's a discount Black Widow. It is. I don't know why, but it's funny. So I'll take it.
I guess Iggy Azalea and Rita Ora could make a song out of that. Come on, I had to get one Iggy joke in there. With all that's going on with her, I had to get one little jab in.
This is very, very
Y'all
true.
leave Iggy alone, no. Y'all leave Iggy alone.
You don't want me to talk about Iggy Azalea's music and what I think about it. I don't know her as a person, but her music sucks.
Yeah, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
All right. Yeah, you're right. We're talking about the MCU. So, Mike, tell me now, what is your number 2, sir?
All right, my number 2 is actually a movie that you had already listed and that we'd already discussed on part 1. So make sure you go back and check part 1 if you want to hear my thoughts on this. But my number 2 is Marvel's The Avengers, the first Avengers movie from 2012. Once again, just kind of briefly summarizing my thoughts. This was a movie that was a game changer, kind of like how the first X-Men film from the year 2000 was a game changer. because here you have all of these characters that have had their own individual standalone movies, but they've dropped subtle references to other things going on in the universe. And then you just plop them all in this one movie, in a movie that shouldn't have worked, a movie that by all standards, I mean, it shouldn't have worked if you think about it. I mean, this movie, it was a movie that could have easily have gone astray. I mean, Justice League is a great reference to this, because Justice League tried to do the exact same thing
and failed
somewhat.
Miserably.
You have individual characters be introduced, and then you throw them together in one movie. And Justice League unfortunately tripped and failed at the box office and couldn't garner anything. But this is something that the Avengers was able to do, and it started up the trend of other film franchises wanting to have a cinematic universe. And so this was the culmination of Iron Man, of Thor, of Captain America, the First Avenger, of the Hulk film. You had Iron Man 2, all of these combined into one film. And so I love Marvel's The Avengers, and to me it is one of the best comic book movies out there around, and it's arguably, I could see this being my number one pick. I can go back and forth between the two because I have so much nostalgia and love for this film, because again, this is the movie that really turned me on to comic book movies. Like, I had always seen most of the comic book movies when they came out in theaters, but this is what started the trend. I mean, Iron Man is ultimately what started the trend, but this is what kept me going back to every single Marvel movie that came in theaters. And the only one that I ever missed that came in theaters was the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. But this movie is the movie that really put me on to comic book films and just comic book fandom in general. It made me rediscover my love for comic books and want to go pick up the comic books and read the different respective issues. Yeah, I could go on and on and on about Marvel's The Avengers, but what do you think about my number 2 pick, man? I think it was actually, I think your number 5 or your number 4, if I'm remembering correctly.
So it was my number 4, and I will say I love this movie just because the nostalgia behind it just gives me rose-colored glasses every time I see it. I don't even notice that the plot and the way they fix everything barely makes any sense. The only thing that really stands out to me and pisses me off royally, and this, is the Star-Spangled onesie they gave Captain America. We've already had this discussion. Yeah, I told you the white does not look battle-worn enough. It's that suit. The censors are going to have fun with me, but that suit.
No, I understand, man. You shared your grief last time we did this about that onesie. Today's sponsor is brought to you by Haze Vapory, Rad Rat Customs, and Disorder Coil Works, located in San Antonio, Texas. And for those of you who do not know or do not recognize these names, they are all vaping companies. And so for those of you who all do not know what vaping is, we have our resident vaping expert, Neospace, who will simply elaborate on what is vaping, what are some of the positives and negatives to vaping, how does it relate to smoking, and what are the overall differences, as well as going into the overall building of a vape machine. Neospace, take it away.
All right, so first thing I'm gonna take it away. First I'm gonna say vape machine, man. I've heard a lot of names for it, but that one's actually pretty original.
You know, I'm pretty original guy, man. I'm always coming up with stuff off the top of my head. I need to trademark that now.
Yes, you do. The whole industry's gonna be pissed because you don't even vape. No, but seriously, go ahead and repeat the first question because I forgot literally all of them.
Just that quick. All right, and let it be known that is not a side effect of vaping. Basically, just give the listeners like a general rundown of like what is vaping and how it's compared to smoking.
All right, so vaping in itself, when you get down to it, is the vaporization of vegetable glycerin, propylene glycol, nicotine if you so choose so, and liquid flavorings. So all mixed together, you have different PG, propylene glycol, and VG, vegetable glycerin ratios. You also have the flavorings in there, which are different ratios and different levels of nicotine. And in the end of it, it's all broken down. There's a few different forms of nicotine, of course. You can always look online, get more information about solid-based nicotines, free-based nicotines. Of course, make sure you're 18 years or older. If you're in certain states, 19 or older. And if you're in certain cities or states, 21 and older. Make sure you are old enough to do this. Do not be one of those douchey kids. And as opposed to smoking, the New England Journal of Medicine, the UK Journal of Medicine, pretty much every European Journal of Medicine has proven 95% safer than smoking. And that 5% is where you're still inhaling something in your lungs that isn't oxygen. So that part's not going to be good.
So what I'm hearing is, like, you could actually, like, be a part of the vape movement and vape, but you can have it with or without nicotine in it, as opposed to when it comes to cigarettes, you really don't have many options. It's either you have a regular cigarette or you have an e-cigarette, or that's basically it.
That's pretty much it. So, I mean, you can opt in or out. You can drop down. If you're already addicted, you can drop down to where you have nothing. It's just that cessation of the hand-to-mouth movement.
You know what? I'm not going to lie. That actually does sound kind of appealing, especially if you're someone who, like, wants to get introduced into the world of vaping. You can start off with no nicotine. And then, of course, if you want to later on start implementing nicotine, you can start doing it little bit by little bit each time you do it.
Exactly. And to speak on my sponsors, Hayes Vapory is actually a personal shop I go to here in San Antonio. Local small business, great people. They actually sponsor me. I do Instagram posts for them, and I actually run their social media page. Disorder Coil Works here in San Antonio provides me with all the coils that go in my mods, which is basically just a huge vape when you get down to it. And Rad Rat Customs is actually, they don't just do vaporizers. They actually do multiple other things, like they recently did a set of wrenches. They did a complete Cerakote paint job on them, and they actually shimmer in the sun now. It's going to be ruined because, of course, they're wrenches, but they're a full customization company.
Again, guys, these are today's sponsors: Hayes Vapory, Rad Rat Customs, and Disorder Coil Works. All of these places are located in San Antonio, Texas. And if you are watching this video on YouTube, we'll make sure we have a link to all of their social media platforms down below so you can go and check these guys out. Thank you again, Neospace, for elaborating for our listeners. I actually learned something. I did not know that you could actually have vaping without nicotine. That is something very interesting, and I'm glad you were able to shed some insight on that.
Well, I'm more than happy to educate.
But all right, man, let's get to your number one pick. And I'm very curious to see what your number one pick is going to be, because, again, guys, even with this time gap, we still never told each other what our number ones are. So I have no idea what he put as his number one film. So I'm curious to see. And Neospace, what do you think is the best MCU movie to date? And this is, again, including everything that has been out and released at this point, except for, obviously, Spider-Man Far From Home. That movie has not came out yet. So this is the only movie that's being excluded from that list.
All right, so before I get started, I'm going to drop some honorable mentions. Ones that didn't make my top 5, but ones that would make my top 10. Avengers Infinity War, of course, because Infinity War. Endgame, because the only problem I had is that I had to hold my so damn long. And I'm actually going to give a special shout out to Iron Man 3. Not because it was one of my favorite movies, but because it was probably one of the worst ones in the MCU outside of the Incredible Hulk.
Oof, yeah, I got what they were going for with Iron Man 3, with the whole going through the whole PTSD thing, but I think they really blue-balled and cucked us on that whole Mandarin thing. I get people love to subvert expectations and do what you don't expect them to do, but you kind of just wasted the Mandarin. And the Mandarin is still alive, because from what I remember at the end of the movie, the real Mandarin ended up escaping, so he's out there, but I guess they either forgot or just don't plan to use him again.
They probably don't care that, or he's going to pop up long after Iron Man is gone, which kind of defeats the purpose of the Mandarin. But anyways, I got one more honorable mention in the MCU, and it goes to Black Panther. Do I feel that storyline was rushed? Yes. But did I love the action set pieces, the great fight scenes, and Killmonger? Hands down, one of the best villains we have had. He's not on par with Thanos or Loki, but he is definitely a close third.
I would agree. Killmonger was the highlight of that Black Panther movie. I mean, here you have a villain who has a legitimate reason why he's doing the things he's doing. And they take time to actually focus in on his backstory and his upbringing, as opposed with a lot of Marvel villains. We have some great ones, like you mentioned. We have Thanos, who is ultimately the best one. Loki, which would be number 2. You have guys like Hela get introduced, who are, make a great badass first appearance when they appear. You have guys like Falcon, or not Falcon, but Vulture, who get great introductions. But then you have crappy ones like the Dark Elves, Malekith. You also have
we don't talk about that.
Red Skull. See, I love Red Skull, but I felt like we still didn't see enough of Red Skull.
Oh no, he got wasted. There's millions of storylines they could have used. They wasted the crap out of Red Skull.
I mean, I like where he ended up because it's kind of poetic. The man who's been chasing the stones all this time is now forced to protect the stones and can never harness the stones for himself. That's poetic justice, and that's irony at its finest. So I'm not going to complain too much about where they led him, but sorry, man. Didn't mean to steal your thunder there, but yeah. Anytime we get a chance to brag on Killmonger, I gotta jump in.
Oh, I completely understand, man. One of the best introductions we've had in a while. And of course, I'm gonna give a shout out to Thor Ragnarok because I freaking love that movie. Korg is still my favorite character in all of the MCU. Just because I love that guy. And that ending part. Oh, well, Meek was here. What happened? I sat on him. Was it he sat on him or stepped on him? I can't remember.
I think he stepped on him.
Poor Meek. But anyways, my number 1 pick, and of all the MCU movies that I still think stands out, even now that I've seen Endgame amongst Endgame, and that is Doctor Strange. So, the reason I picked out Doctor Strange was, 1, the set pieces. The beautiful CGI, the way they displayed the mirror dimension, the dark dimension, Dormammu, everything, Caecilius and his goons' eyes, every single bit of CGI in the movie was beautiful. The set pieces were beautiful. Even in the beginning, when Doctor Strange is, a teetotal douche, he's a rich doctor. Even then, his apartment, I loved the carousel of watches. That was just like the flashiest, biggest I'm a thing. The Lamborghini, the whole hospital set piece. I come from a long line of medical professionals, so there was a lot of problems I could have pointed out, but I'm not going to go there. To see Rachel McAdams in a movie is always nice because she is always gorgeous. And, I mean, just all in all, it was a great movie. To watch the Ancient One actually get killed, actually lose, you think for a second, oh, they're doomed. And to see the ending, Dormammu shows up, Strange literally has to catch him in a time loop to annoy him to go away because he knows he can't beat him. It's just absolutely wonderful.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain. What is this?
This is a little earthly concept. It's called time. And right now you're caught in an infinite loop of it.
I gotta give him props for that. That was something. I was like, wow, they were introducing Dormammu so quick. Oh wow.
That was some clever writing right there. That's all I can say for it. That was clever writing.
I will say it did make Caecilius look like much of a weak villain then, but it's fine. It set up Dormammu, and then of course it set up at the end Chiwetel Ejiofor's character.
Oh god. Mordo. Too many sorcerers. I get it, but they're basically just, I think they rushed to get rid of Caecilius too soon, and they're trying that rogue storyline from the comics where Mordo turned on them. They're trying to apply it to basically replace Caecilius because they're like, oh, wait a minute, we wasted this guy that we could have kept around to be a to Strange.
Yeah, when I first saw Doctor Strange in theaters, which, by the way, I'll say, wow, man, this is your number 1 pick. I definitely didn't see that coming. But when I saw this movie in theaters, that was one thing that bothered me is when you get to that post-credit scene and you see Mordo like saying, that's the problem, too many. So I was like, you kind of went from 0 to 100 pretty quickly. Like, I get that in the span of a couple of days, you found out that the Ancient One, who is always talked about, don't, use the dark dimension, don't access the dark dimension, find out that the person you sold your life to, basically, that you swore to protect, has been lying to you, essentially, and is using the dark magic that she's been telling you not to harness. And then you have Doctor Strange, who has been told, not to mess with the flow of time, take the time stone and mess with the flow of time and reset things. And while, yes, the Ancient One and Doctor Strange broke the rules, they had to break those rules in order to save the Earth. But Chiwetel Ejiofor's character had gotten to the point where he was all about rules, and that was his breaking point, was those two moments. So I get what they were doing, but yeah, it did seem like they went a little too quick with it. I would have waited until Doctor Strange 2 to introduce that concept of him turning on Strange, but I mean, that's neither here nor there now, so.
I mean, I'm looking at it like this. I'm a man who likes the visuals in his movie. If the visuals are good, I can give the plot a pass. And Doctor Strange is what I call the writers being, and the CGI guys and all the effects guys being on psilocybin mushrooms. It's like Thor Ragnarok. I think the people that were behind the CGI and special effects were on acid the whole time, because you watch that movie and it's like going on an acid trip. I'm pretty sure you don't know what that feels like, Mike, but let me tell you, it's some shit.
I mean, I can imagine. I've seen it in like movies and stuff, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, yes, again, Doctor Strange, one of the up there with the heaviest CGI movies, bringing the whole mirror dimension to life and bringing the other different dimensions. And then we get references to the dimension that Ant-Man went into when like the Ancient One is bouncing him around to different places and different universes and realms. Again, I did love Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal of Doctor Strange. He had that right amount of sass and dickness to him that matched Tony Stark, and so seeing them banter off of each other in Infinity War was the greatest thing ever, because it's basically like looking at two sides of the same coin. While one is a little bit more morally right, you have someone who is morally right, but at the same time still a little bit, more of a prick. And so it was fun watching them go back and forth. Love Benedict Wong. I love, his whole straight man thing. They kind of lost that when they got to the later movies, but I mean, that's fine. I mean, again, the characters have to progress and grow. And then, of course, I can't brag on Tilda Swinton enough. I know when she got cast, everybody was up in arms like, oh my gosh, the Ancient One has always been an Asian male. Not only are they making it a white person, but they're making it a woman. Oh my gosh. Just everybody was all upset and outraged about it. But that was one of the smartest decisions that Kevin Feige and that Scott Derrickson could have done for that movie, because she was perfect in that role. She was perfect in that role. And I was so happy to see her again in that role in Endgame. Because again, Tilda Swinton crushed it. She crushes anything that she's in, and she's a scene stealer. And that's what she did. She was the ultimate foil to Doctor Strange and got Doctor Strange to think about something other than his own selfish pride and ego, which you need characters like that in your life. And so when she ultimately dies, that is a genuinely sad moment, because then it's like, oh, well, who's going to kind of be his no man now? And you would imagine it'd be his girlfriend, but I mean, we haven't really gotten any mention of her. But again, a lot was going on with Infinity War and Endgame, so that's understandable. But now that I'm thinking about it, I could see why someone would put this at their number one, because it kind of has all the elements of everything. It has elements of action, elements of fantasy, elements of horror, also has elements of time travel in a way in it. So it has several themes mixed into one film. So, okay, good pick, man. Good pick. I agree with this pick.
Thank you, sir. And now, since I am out of options to give, as I just gave my number one, sir, hit us with that big finale. What is your number one pick?
All right, so a lot of you saw this coming. I'm not going to even BS you around.
That's a terrible drum roll.
Terrible drum roll. But all of you know what it is. It's a movie that, to me, it's one of the best movies because it had some of the best moments in it, but at the same time, it harked back and called upon every single Marvel movie that has been released to this date, even including the Incredible Hulk remake. And of course, I'm talking 2019's Avengers Endgame.
I thought we agreed to not put them on the list, man.
Hey, look, I'm not going to lie. I started to put Captain America on here just to mess with people. Not Captain America, but Captain Marvel. But no, I couldn't even do it, even though she's in this movie. But no, I had to, man. And a lot of you are being like, oh, well, of course you would put Avengers Endgame at number one. If you've seen the movie, which if you haven't seen the movie, you might as well go ahead and tune out because, again, the director said it's open season for spoilers. Spoilers are everywhere now. But if you still have managed to not be spoiled, you know what my number one pick is. Go ahead and just end the podcast right here. Otherwise, just skip to the end of the podcast to hear our closing thoughts on our top 5 films. But yeah, to me, Avengers Endgame was the perfect movie. I mean, yes, plenty of plot holes in the movie. Plenty of plot holes. They went a little backwards with Thanos' character, but at the same time, they still were able to develop the character right from the beginning scene where they confront Thanos again on his home planet, the farm. You get character growth out of him because when they cut his hand off and Rocket rolls his hand over and the stones are gone, my heart shot out of my chest like, oh no, what's going on? And they're like, where's the stones? And then eventually he avenge that I used the stones to destroy the stones. Such powerful things would only lead to temptation, which again, you go back to Thanos being one of the best villains because he believes that he's not the villain, but the hero in his story. And he is such a philosopher with things because he's right. He's seen people get those stones and it's corrupted them. He didn't want to be the same way. So he went ahead and destroyed the stones. And then the whole journey that every single original Avengers character gets to go on, it's powerful and moving. We got to see Captain America, how he deals with, losing everyone in his snap. And he has opened up a support group and is trying to tell people to move on. But like he said in the trailer, we can't, not us, because they still want revenge. They still want to kick Thanos' purple butt. They want to figure out a way to do this. You have Black Widow who, to me, got the swan song send off on this movie. And I know a lot of people are mad because she didn't get a funeral scene. In a way, she kind of got one when they were on the gazebo, when they were over there talking on the, I think it's either bidet or gazebo, one of those two, when they were over there talking and everything about, well, Thor's like, well, why are we acting like she's dead? Of course she's going to be coming back. And I think that was supposed to be her funeral scene, but maybe they'll give her one at the end of her standalone film next year. We don't know. But it was a swan song for her. We finally got the resolution and conflict to Thor and what he's been dealing with all of these movies. Because like I talked about, Thor's story is tragic. I mean, here you have this man who was who's a god, who thinks that he's untouchable, have to go through this character journey of learning that your pride and ego is what's clouding your judgment from ruling over Asgard. Then we get to the point where he loses his mother because his brother decided to be a little bit of a dickwad in somewhat. So you have that going on. Then you get the relationship with his father, him ultimately losing the one person he always turned to, losing his father, then losing Mjolnir, which was a heartbreaker from him, finding out he had a long lost sister that has like a massive bloodlust for killing people, then ultimately going from there of losing your eye and losing your will to fight for the longest time. And then still not done yet, because then we got to talk about how his home world, the world that he grew up on, that he wanted to rule, got destroyed. Then you go into Infinity War. Half of his people have been wiped out. Then on top of that, losing your brother and losing
your best friend.
And I don't know why I'm spacing on his name.
Heimdall.
Thank you. Losing Heimdall. all of that, then you finally, are able to get the ultimate weapon, Stormbreaker, and it fails. That's why Fat Thor works, because I know a lot of people were upset about Fat Thor. You just heard the list of stuff that this guy went through. He's might be a depressing god.
Eat.
Exactly. He might be a god, but at the end of the day, he is still like everybody else and can still be hurt and still has feelings and can still be depressed. That's why Fat Thor works. And I support Fat Thor, and I'm glad they didn't try to reverse it at the end of the movie and they kept him fat, because that is a scar that's going to stick with him. Now, obviously, they'll probably have some kind of Bowflex joke between him and Peter Quill and as Guardians of the Galaxy, or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, whatever they're going to call it. They'll probably have some kind of joke with a Bowflex where he's back down his old slim self. But it worked. Going to Bruce Banner and the Hulk. Their whole chemistry worked, because for the longest time, like he said, he was treating him like a disease. And then he started to think about, no, the Hulk is not a disease. The Hulk is a cure. And a lot of people were like, the Hulk was scared. That's why he didn't come out in Infinity War. No, the directors clarified he wasn't scared. He was tired of always being like the one who has to save everybody. And what does he get for it? Nothing. He's forced to go back into hiding again and is stuck hiding in Bruce Banner's body. So finally, he put the brain and the brawn together. Boom, we get Mr. Fix-It. We get Professor Hulk, the best of both worlds. I love it. I love the journey that they went on. Tony Stark's whole journey. Tony Stark, a man who originally cared about nothing but himself, basically almost sacrificed his life trying to defend the Earth. The same Earth that he really didn't care for when back in the original Iron Man movie. Character growth. I love what they did with him. I love the relationship that he had with his new family, with Pepper Potts, with his daughter. Oh my gosh, the Love You 3000 memes are abound, because every time I hear that, I tear up a little bit, and I'm going to make sure I don't cry now. And then ultimately him giving up his life to save the entire planet from Thanos' destruction. Him giving up the one thing that he cared about the most in his first film when he was first introduced, giving that up and finally being able to rest, as Pepper Potts said. And then Hawkeye's story. Everyone loves to make the jokes about, oh, Hawkeye, he's just a guy who shoots bows. Him and Widow are really the most useless characters of them all. They take that useless character and they use him. They give him a story arc. This man lost everything. Not only did he lose his teammates, but he lost his entire family and didn't know what happened or what was going on. I'm assuming at some point the Avengers got on and made a public announcement and told everyone what Thanos did. But at the time, he did not know what was going on. And I imagine that probably freaked him out. And so the journey he goes on in terms of Ronin, going around slaughtering all the cartel members and all of these warlords and stuff, it makes sense. Like he said, all the ones that died got Thanos, you get me. That seems like a fair trade. The story they took him on was so beautiful. And then the way that they interwove his story with Black Widow's story, with her ultimately sacrificing her life for not only Clint, but also for, again, the sake of the universe and the sake of the earth. This movie was all about sacrifice. Everybody had to sacrifice something. And then I haven't even gotten to some of the best parts, like freaking Captain America wielding Mjolnir, or Meow Meow as some people call it. Him taking it, juggling it, bouncing it off of Thanos' head and bouncing it off of his shield, bouncing it off and still just kicking Thanos' butt with it. That was a moment I had that moment spoiled for me, but I didn't know when it was going to come or if it was a story, because originally they told me that he was going to wield Mjolnir and then he was going to die. That did not happen. So even though that scene got spoiled for me, it still took me by surprise. Thor wielding both Mjolnir and wielding Stormbreaker at the same time. Classic. You got Iron Man's classic callback to his original Iron Man armor. Oh, there was so much love in this movie. Then you have Scott Lang coming in, who's basically the MVP of this movie, because if he wouldn't have came out of the quantum realm, also that rat is the MVP too, because if it wasn't for that rat, Scott wouldn't have came out. But because Scott came out, he was ultimately able to come up with the idea of going into the quantum realm and these different dimensions and getting these time stones. Without him, none of this would have happened. Everybody had a part to play in this movie. And I'm not going to give away all the best moments in this movie because I want people to still go and see it. But this movie, to me, is, again, a movie that has a lot of plot holes in this movie. A lot of things that are just kind of like scratch your head moments. But even past all of that, to me, this movie is the representation of what Marvel started with in 2008. And I can't wait to see where they go from here because things are different from this point. Endgame was a game changer, pun intended. This was the end of an era, but also the beginning of something new. My gosh, Avengers Endgame. It beat Titanic. For goodness sake, it might beat Avatar. Tell me where did we ever think we were going to see that? When we saw that first movie in 2008 with Iron Man, or when we saw the Incredible Hulk movie come out a couple of months later, did we expect those movies to ever get up that high? No. No way. Not at all. Here we have Endgame, who was literally, I think, $75 million away from being the highest grossing film of all time. It finally toppled Titanic. Titanic has been the number 2 movie, originally number 1 movie, for over 20 years. And it took a massive, massive sledgehammer to that record and shattered it. I haven't even talked about the opening box office record that it set. No film in history has ever hit $300 million plus opening weekend. Not to mention the movie hit $2 billion in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. This movie is a combination of everything that is awesome and that is great. And again, there are movies like Captain America Winter Soldier. Yes, I agree. That is a better shot film. It's a little bit more airtight with its plot. But Avengers Endgame does so many great things that it overshadows all of that. And so again, I could spend hours. Literally, I could probably spend 3 hours talking about why Avengers Endgame is so awesome. But I'm not going to do that to you guys. I'm not going to do that to you listeners. But Avengers Endgame is awesome. And to me, I don't think Marvel will be able to touch this again for a very long time. Because again, this was the culmination of everything that started back in 2008. And while Spider-Man Far From Home might be ending Phase 3 and leading us into Phase 4 with the next subsequent movies, Endgame is still going to be the movie that people are going to be talking about for years to come. This is right up there with the first X-Men movie. People still talk about how of a game changer and how amazing that movie was. This movie is going to show people for generations to come a comic book movie. Yes, and while everyone wants to holler comic book fatigue, look what a comic book movie did. My gosh.
It's basically unheard of. You're taking a source material that barely anybody really knows and then turning it into one of the biggest events in the world, in history, that's probably not going to get toppled for a very long time.
Everything in this movie was a swan song, and I'm just beside myself. Like I said, I don't think another Marvel film will be able to touch me the way that Endgame did, because upon my first screening, I cried. Upon my second screening, I cried more. Upon my third screening, I was sobbing and crying even more on the floor. And this was my third showing of it. That just shows you.
For a movie to hit you like that, it hits a whole other echelon of great.
Exactly. No Marvel movies have been able to bring me to tears, but no movie like this has touched me this way in a very, very long time. Because again, even Infinity War made me cry, but it was just that one scene that made me cry with the "I don't want to go, Mr. Stark" line. And the fact that they called back to that line where it's reversed, where this time Iron Man is the one who's dying and isn't coming back, and Peter has to sit there and accept he's not coming back. He's dying. Oh, gosh.
It hurts your heart. And I mean, honestly, man, I've got nothing to say on the movie because you pretty much just summed up everything I was going to say.
I know, guys. I probably rambled on for a good hot minute, but you guys just do not understand the level
That's just
of
what this movie does.
Everyone talks about the Lord of the Ring trilogy and how the last Lord of the Ring film is as held as this perfect movie, this movie that ended a story well. Endgame is up there. To me, Endgame is up there. It is definitely up there because it was the closing chapter to a lot of characters that we have grown up with since 2008. And the fact that they gave every single original Avengers a swan song to go out on into the future of Phase 4, it's just amazing. And Kevin Feige, to you and to everyone on the staff over at MCU, to the different directors, whether it be Joe and Anthony Russo, whether it be Jon Favreau, whether it be Taika Waititi, whether it's James Gunn, whether it's Kenneth Branagh, all of you, everyone who has had some kind of influence on this MCU, thank you. Because without what the pieces fitting together, this could have been a jumbled mess. Yet it wasn't. It was the perfect way to go out on.
Thank you to all of you, because it has been wonderful. And that's coming from a DC fanboy, someone that's been hardcore since he was about 6 years old. They did a fantastic job up until this point, and I cannot wait to see what Phase 4 holds for us.
Same here, man. Same here. But all right, guys, just going back over our top 5 list again. Andy, we're going to start with you, man. Go over your top 5 list again, man, and then I'll go over my top 5 list, and then we'll go ahead and call it a day and wrap this one up.
All right, so my top 5, of course, number 5 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Number 4 was the original OG Avengers. Number 3 was Spider-Man Homecoming. Number 2 was Captain America the First Avenger and the Winter Soldier. And number 1 was, of course, my all-time favorite movie, which Mike is still shocked by, Doctor Strange. He knows me, and he's still shocked by it somehow.
Yes, I'm still a little shocked, but understandably, I can understand why you have this as your number 1 film. But all right, guys, going back down my list, number 5, I have Captain America Civil War / the first original Iron Man movie. Number 4, we have Thor Ragnarok. Number 3, we have Captain America the Winter Soldier. Number 2, we have Marvel's The Avengers. And number 1, we have Avengers Endgame. But there you have it, sweaties. Mine and Neospace's unfiltered thoughts and opinions on the top 5 best MCU movies. What did you think of our picks? And what is your top 5 list of the best MCU movies? And are you excited to see what's coming up next with Spider-Man Far From Home and then subsequently the beginning of Phase 4? Let us know your thoughts. And once again, I want to thank you all so much for watching. Again, if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, please be sure to leave a like and a comment. And then if you're listening on Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, then make sure you add us to your favorite list and leave a review about our podcast. And once again, I also want to give a special thanks to my co-host Neospace for sweating it up with me today. Neo, please tell the people where they can find you on social media, man.
Well, first I'd like to say it is always my pleasure, sir. You can find me on Instagram at Neospace_Cloudian. You can also find me, on YouTube. I cannot remember my channel's name to save my life. I'm pretty sure Mike found the link to it already.
Neospace_Cloudian.
I'm working on getting that up and going, combined with real life and work. It's a lot. And I mean, hey, make sure you follow our sponsors, Haze Vapory, Disorder Coil Works, and Rad Rat Customs. Located here in scenic San Antonio, Texas. It was fun sweating it up today, and may you all have a wonderful day.
And you guys and gals can simply follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at officialms21 and on YouTube at Mikey Savage 21. Thank you all again, and I hope you all have a sweat-tastic day. Peace out, y'all.
Peace out.